how we should.
And then, yeah, then the board will.
Just for a couple of days.
But I would.
Most of her plans sit back here, like. We're public.
It was fine. All right, it is 4:30, so let me call January 18th Board of Health meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. First order of business is taking nominations for office.
I would like to nominate John Lynn for president and Jason Marker for vice president.
I have a motion for John Lynn as president, Jason Marker for vice president. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Can we make another motion?
We usually discuss this and either goes or dies and then you can discuss how you want, and if you'd like an alternative, you can do the different discussion.
Cool. So discussion, that's where we're at.
That's it.
So John and Jason have served faithfully on this board and humbly so, and have been dedicated public servants. The history for the health department has been that the person who served as vice president would then come up to the role of president. So in this case, I would support Jason Marker being the president and John Lynn taking that VP role with the tradition that we've established during the last quite a few years. And then after you've served as president, then you'll have had that experience and then you could be president. But that's typically, that's the tradition that's been here at the Department of Health. That's what I'm proposing.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think John has 30 years of experience working with the health department in various capacities, public and the board,
Yep.
private. Jason has served faithfully too, but I think having somebody in an environmental role, that's an area that we need a little more. I think it would be good to have a little more emphasis on. Not that everybody's doing a good job, but I think we need to emphasize that area a little bit more. And having leadership in that area, I think is very helpful. Also, I've always been impressed with how John really sees, because you talked about being on other boards and how you really want to have, you want to have boards that are where everybody's working together, where there's decorum, and where the president is calling boards and strikes and giving everybody a chance to really speak. And so I think John would have a particularly good position being in that role.
And I have worked with every health officer in the public health in the health department for those 30 years now. And we're crafting policy and overseeing various other boards and commissions, water resources. If I help write the ordinances, the groundwater protection ordinance, the wellhead protection ordinance, and the property transfer ordinance back in the mid-90s, and then I ran that board, groundwater resources advisory board from inception in 99 until 15 when it kind of fizzled. I'm on various other boards and used to overseeing boards or leading boards. I'm one amongst an equal group here, but leading boards and to help make good policy decisions and craft good regulations and guidelines. So you have to do it, but Jason's awesome too.
It would be my pleasure to serve alongside John in a number of different capacities that we could work together. Though I do think that recent past and the near future for the health department would suggest that it is medical issues that will be at the forefront of our deliberations in the coming years, rather than environmental issues, though no less important. I mean, I think that we can look at the landscape of where we've been in the last 2 years and where we're going to be in the coming 5 and suspect that it is more healthcare related things than environmental ones that will dominate in our discussions.
As a physician and somebody who's known Jason for 30 years, it's hard to, I think that John is a very great candidate, but I agree with Jason that I really think that it's going to probably be more medical healthcare type related things. Environmental things are really important. I think that you're absolutely top notch at that stuff, you know, everything that I was seeing. And I appreciate your decorum in all of the board meetings. But because I've known Jason a lot longer and I have a penchant towards the medical side, I would support Jason, president, and John VP, if that would be okay with everybody. That would be my personal preference.
Any comment? Last one left.
Why do you think you haven't been the president thus far? Why is I'm just learning this. So it's like, to me, everyone has an equal role, correct? So what would be the benefit of having a medical person as the president versus an environmental person as the president? If we're all having an equal vote, how is being the president a critical thing when you're saying we're headed toward more health-oriented issues?
I can speak from my time working as vice president under Dr. Weidinger to say that she often is the one who is the spokesperson for the board and the first point of contact for people in the community who want to talk about any number of things. And that is a role that is important to be a face of the board in those conversations, which I believe those conversations as they come to the board are largely going to be in that healthcare arena. Yes, those calls can come to someone else and can pass down to any other member of the board that they would like to.
The board president speaks for the board's decisions, though it doesn't, they don't have their own, they don't erse up what the board says. Is that correct?
The board will have many conversations in this room where it is important for us to have one unified voice to the community when we speak to the community. However, those first points of contact where we're having those initial discussions that will come back to the board often will come to the president first as the spokesperson and then come to the board for further conversation. So in that sense, perhaps having that first point of contact be in that healthcare arena could be beneficial.
Does the board president work more, you think, with the public or with the health department
I bet you that is.
in interaction? I mean,
Yes, I mean, there is much more time spent with the health department and the county health officer. If we want to generalize the conversation a bit more, to say that the first key thing that will need to happen is a search for a new health officer. And certainly in that human resources sphere, John and I are equals in that space. But in the history of this board, that is most often a medical person, and the new president will need to be ready to have those conversations and selection of that health officer in the interviewing phase through the personnel committee and such.
I think the one flaw in the argument though is that, I mean, Dr. Feidinger isn't a medical doctor either, and she's been leading our board. I mean, your PhD is in environmental, what is your PhD in?
Educational leadership.
Okay, sorry, thank you, I couldn't remember. So I mean, it's an example of how we don't actually need a medical doctor in the position of board president, because a non-medical doctor has been serving as president for a number of years now. And Mike Harding, who was a school superintendent,
Right.
He was served as president for a number of years.
For
And
20 years.
I know him because he was the school superintendent at the school corporation my mom worked at. So that's why that's in my brain. So, I mean, we've got a long history. How long was Mike Harding president?
20 years.
20 years. Okay. So it seems like, I mean, now the statute itself requires 2 doctors to be on the board. So we are always going to be in a position where we have medical knowledge on the board, but the president is the person calling the balls and strikes at the meeting and leading the discussion and typing up the agenda and getting the emails from other people, and when they want something on the agenda, he says, sure, let's get it on there.
Well, perhaps I could say something about the president's role since I've been in it for the last 3 years. It's that, but it is much more than that. I confer with just about everybody in this room on a regular basis about what happens here at the health department. I build relationships here inside of the health department. We develop a thoughtful agenda. We have strategy meetings to talk with the health officer I meet with routinely. During COVID was an exceptionally unusual time where we were in communication daily, multiple times. So it's a very demanding position. And when you ask, are you working more with the health department or are you working with the community? I would actually argue that it's both. Because we serve in an advocacy role. So we are an extension of the health department and we're out in the field and in the community. So I'm the face
You
of the
mean
health
the president?
department. No,
Not-
no, the
Okay.
president and all of us. So I take that role very seriously, obviously. So when I'm in the community, I'm a representative of the organization I work for, but also as a representative and an advocate of the Department of Health. So it's a complex role and believe me, it's not that John can't do the role. What I think is really important here is that Jason has served as a VP already for the last 3 years, has had those inner workings and conversations and so forth, just like I served as a VP under Dale Deardorff, Dr. Deardorff. And then I came up as president, and that has sort of been the model that had been set up. That's what I have come to know. It kind of makes sense when we're talking about succession plans, right? That I now go off, the next person comes up, we bring in somebody else new to train them and get them ready to go.
Do you feel like Jason has better integral knowledge of the health department than John?
I would say yes, and that's because I know that Dr. Marker has projects and other things ongoing here with the health department. Also because I know that we communicate about the health department all the time. So I know that he has that inner working knowledge in the health department.
The other thing about Dr. Marker is that he is involved very heavily with the national and state American Academy of Family Physicians and leadership positions. He knows lots and lots of people around the state and health positions that he can collaborate with. He teaches, he's a teacher, he's one of the directors at the residency program. He has a lot of resources and a lot of not just knowledge base, but also connections throughout the state in terms of health activities on the state and national level within the Academy of Family Physicians. He's very well, highly regarded within our area.
Another thing though, and to think about though, is that John has been reappointed to the board. And that's a secure position for the next year. So it might be having the president in that position might be wiser if what you're saying about the presidency being kind of the role, the face of the department, then I think having somebody who's just been reappointed is going to be here for the whole year is an important thing to consider. We have more flexibility in those other roles, but
we're
we
not,
presidency.
I was gonna say why, we're not aware that Dr. Marker is going off the board. Do you have
No.
information that he is?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay,
When is your time? When is,
I serve at the pleasure of the commissioners.
right.
so there's no like date?
but John was just formally reappointed along with Krista.
Is something else?
No, I'm just trying to take it all in. I'm just trying to figure like, if the president, I feel like the president needs to be the one that has the best working relationship with the board that we serve on, like the health department. And I don't know, I don't know what you guys have done, so I'm like,
Disadvantage in that regard.
yes,
They're both good.
yeah,
Both of them. are
I think
good.
so. I mean, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
I know Dr. Marker on, so,
Other venues.
yes. But I feel like the communication, whoever's worked the most with the actual health department. I mean, because from what I understand, the president is going to speak to the public and whatever the board decided, so it's not like they're having their own thing. It's not like they're gonna go out and speak to everybody and say what they think, and it's what everybody here thinks that you speak on, so. Does that make sense?
Any other discussion?
Do you know, does anybody know where, is Teresa coming?
I texted her, she said she'll be 15 minutes late.
Should we hold off this?
She's not here. There's no more discussion on the vote. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Yes. All right, so I am going to call for a 5-minute recess. In the hopes that Dr. Cooper comes. In the event she does not make it, then we adjourn the meeting and reconvene next month.
Okay.
Can I have a motion for a recess? Please?
I will move for a recess.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same sign.
Where do you work now?
I have my own.
So how your
That's well, it's my.
There's no word.
I have my own of this.
I can take deep breaths without pain. Yep. And I-
So we had a motion, the motion failed, because it was deadlocked, we don't have enough members, so once again, I will call for nominations.
I'd like to make a nomination to nominate Jason as the president and John Lynn as our vice president.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, do I need discussion?
Can we renominate
Yes.
the original nomination again?
Yes,
Okay,
I mean, not now,
yes.
but if this were to fail, yes,
Can we catch Teresa up? Just the original motion
it's
was,
discussion time, so
Okay.
go ahead.
the original motion was John Lind for president, Jason Mark for vice president. And it was a 3-3 tie. Us three for John, them for Jason as president. And now it is Jason for president, John for vice president.
Can I ask a question
Yes, you may.
on those?
Yeah.
Okay, so, just for both gentlemen, sort of, why do you think you're the better option for president?
We've covered some of this material already, but I don't mind answering that again. It sort of feels like middle school here, just a little bit all of a sudden. Councilman John? I would say the key argument that has been brought forth is that to have leadership in the healthcare arena may be more important given the potential agenda items in the years ahead, as opposed to someone whose forte is in the environmental arena. I think that's a key crux of this. I think another thing that we talked about earlier is sort of depth of involvement with the board. Certainly, John has a longer tenure of doing work with the Department of Health, but the work that I've done is no less deep, just not as lengthy as his has been, and some of the work that I've done out in the community as well. Certainly, I'm happy to serve the Board of Health as its president and feel like as a political centrist, I'm happy to try to listen to voices from all sides of the political spectrum, whether it be around the board table, within the department, or certainly local government at large, to try to be a person who can help other people reach across the aisle, since I'm sort of standing in the aisle most of the time on many of these things. And I'm happy to serve in that capacity if asked to do so.
Answering that again, if you've already done it.
My background from '93, I started working with Dr. Plain on the health department issues, helped write various ordinances, groundwater protection, et cetera. I was the inaugural president on the groundwater advisory board. And then as Dr. Plain retired, I worked with the various health officers that came behind Dr. Plain on the management and administration of the department. You know, do we have an administrator? Do we have a part-time doctor, full-time doctor? And then all the how we execute the vision for the health department. So I've worked with since '93, so 30 years I've been working with the group. I've worked also in the governor's task force, help writing the rules on sewage and water issues for the counties in the state. I do think I'm a problem solver, a collaborator. I love to get input from all sides. My private life or personal or professional life, I'm in front of plan commissions, talking with people trying to solve problems that work for everybody. And that's how I think we create good policy, effective government regulation programs. And I'd be happy to serve. Either way, I'll serve, but for president, happy to do
I have a follow-up.
Yes, ma'am.
it.
So what have been the challenges that you've seen? I mean, I came in sort of a few months ago and it was kind of like very contentious. Okay, and so what do you see as the challenges we've had and like, what does forward look like for both of you in light of having differing perspectives and sort of the way it's gone down previously?
What challenges do I see going forward?
No, like just looking backwards, you know, and just saying, hey, I'm here because I'd like to see something, maybe the focus change on more of the things that, you know, we're tasked to do. I think sometimes our meetings have gotten a little out of control, and not really focused on, you know, sewage and, you know, water and mental health and, you know, all the things that we're here to talk about. I don't know if that's anyone else's perspective. And that's kind of mine. And so it would help me to kind of just see where your heads are in terms of what forward looks like compared to where we've been.
Well, I can start by saying the reason I agreed to serve on the board was one, because I really felt our health department was not perceived the way they should be from the public. And then also with the turnover, one of my major tenets was to get our wages up where we can keep quality staff and develop more complex, significant, effective programs for the county. And then the other reason I got on board is because on the environmental side, I see a lot of groundwater. We are blessed in this county with an aquifer, the sole source aquifer that serves drinking water, everybody in this county, some people outside this county. And I think some of the programs that we have going now, while they are effective by yesterday's standards, aren't going to meet the needs of this county going forward. So those are my two major issues. Why I'm here, why I agreed to be on here.
Your question is challenges going forward. And I would, I think, also point to two general areas with some ideas underneath each of those. There's I think, a fairly strong groundswell of interest in smaller government. And while there are parts of that that I certainly resonate with, the Board of Health and the Department of Health are designed to help the least of these in our community. And that does require funding and will to do the things that can help folks who are not in positions currently to be able to help themselves. And so I think one of the emerging problems is that there needs to be some balancing between the desire for small government and the will and interest in helping those who cannot help themselves. And that's going to come to a head in the Department of Health. I think another thing going forward that's going to be troublesome for us is we need to make sure that we're in a place where everyone around the table can be expert in all of the things that we need to talk about as board. My job is as a teacher of healthcare things, of public health, primary care kinds of things. And I think to be in a position of leadership where I get to use that teaching role and my policy experience to be able to say, let's talk about what this really means. Let's talk about lead. Let's have somebody who knows a lot about groundwater tell us about this and not just skirt through that. Let's talk about what vaccines are all about. Let's talk about how we manage the health of a broader community that can sometimes not help itself as well as we'd like it to. And then build communications with local government so that they can understand those things too. I'm desirous of the ability to be able to do that and bring that education to some folks in local government who have wanted to turn their ears off to that, but I think are actually open to it if we can have the right kinds of conversations with them.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none. Oh, yes.
Can I open it up to discussion from the employees of the board, the health board? No. Okay. All right.
All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay, nay.
Motion fails. Again, I ask for nominations for officers.
May I nominate John Lynn for president and Jason Rucker for vice president?
May, is there a second?
Second,
Is there discussion?
I would just add that the tradition of the health department has been that the person who has served as vice president and has been training in that position would then naturally come into assuming the role of the president. Jason has served faithfully, humbly, dedicated for the last 3 years in that role during COVID, no less. When all of us were on the phones nonstop trying to figure out how we were going to keep our community safe. And so having that inner workings of understanding how this department works, how the community intersects with that, unified command, all of those individuals who participated daily on all of those calls, we were part of that apparatus. We know all about what was happening and how that was functioning, and we have relationships with people in the health department. That's not to say that John can't have that as well. What I'm saying is that is exactly the role that Jason has already been playing. So for me to exit out of the presidency and for Jason to step up makes a lot of logical common sense.
well, Jason is vice president, hopefully he would still be there to help with those issues.
I would hope so. Yes.
Yes,
What happens, I guess I should ask this last time, but if you are reappointed, like you're not reappointed.
Mhm.
What happens to your position as if you were vice president or president? What exactly happens with that then?
communities removed,
Right, let's say,
then
because,
we would do this again.
oh Lord,
The
okay.
commissioners will appoint a replacement, and then there will be a re-election for the vice presidency.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
The motion fails. Do I have any nominations?
I would renominate Jason Marker as the president and John Lynn as the vice president.
Is there any second?
I'll second it.
All right, discussion.
I guess the only thing I'd add is that, I guess I'm not even sure how long this tradition of the vice president automatically is the president. After the president steps down, how long that is. Are there any bylaws or anything written?
No.
No. So how long?
We
Have you-
haven't-
Were you
we
the
have-
vice president?
We have not adhered to the Indiana code for some years with regard to the election of officers. This has generally been a more informal board. It's only very recently that it has taken on a much more formal approach. The way that I was asked to be the VP previously was that the president came to me and asked me to serve in that role. And I said, yes. And then it went, and then the board said, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, let's do that. So.
Well, I'm glad we're now adhering to the code.
Yeah, what is that code then? Why are we not adhering to it? You're saying,
That the code says that you are to elect officers annually at the first meeting of the year. And for the last several years, we've been doing that. Everybody would have a 2-year term rather than a 1-year term. It's not that radically different or something like that. So
Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the floor?
Well, the motion is for,
The motion is for Dr. Mark to be president and Mr. Lynn to be vice president.
Aye.
aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I have to vote.
No. Motion carries 4-1. Dr. Marker, I turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. John, looking forward to working with you very much as President. Send you an email tomorrow.
All right.
That's the work. Item 3 on the agenda is adoption of the agenda as recommended by the Board of Health members adopt the agenda for January 18 meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, do you need a motion?
Need a motion.
Probably should.
I move to accept
Really
the
helping
agenda.
me.
Second.
Sorry. I move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Guys have it. Item 4, approval of the minutes. You've been sent a copy of the minutes of the December 4th.
Actually, it not been sent out in the minutes.
There's no minutes. We'll have to do them next month.
Are you skipping that
Yes.
entirely?
Yes.
Okay. Item 5, board president announcements, which we've already had a chance to meet Kristen Vincent just a little bit, but welcome to our board. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am a nurse and a nurse midwife, and I've owned my own practice for 7 years. I also do primary healthcare for women. And I am very passionate about public health and mental health specifically, and obviously women and children's health. I do think there's a lot of environmental issues that we face that are affecting our public health as well. I don't feel that it's just all healthcare. It's a lot of other things that contribute. When I was looking through the statistics, I was like, oh, this explains some things, but I'd love to see less power wielding in the health department and the Board of Health specifically, but also maintaining the improved health of our community. That's about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you with us. You have not already received some orientation materials, and you've got your big packet there, but opportunities to meet the major players in all the divisions. We would welcome you to take that opportunity to meet some folks. Well, just on board. All right, item 6, health officer's presentation report. Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Marker. You all should have received the health officer's report from Jenny Parcell. Really nothing out of the ordinary in this, as Carolyn said, it's all outstanding and remarkable. But really nothing particularly remarkable within the report, out of the usual. So happy to respond to any questions that you may have. My
Questions?
student would be happy to respond to the questions you may have.
Questions for Dr. Rogers about what's in the report today?
One of the things I have done over the years, you all may not be aware of it, but before this meeting, I've always gone to each of my unit directors and have asked them if there's anything particularly salient or something that they wanted to highlight. And I can assure you that in this particular report, there was nothing that they particularly wanted to highlight.
So in the social needs assessments for the community health workers, this is on page 34.
Thank you.
So this is, so the social needs assessments, it says that 373 total assessments from March to today. And they provided 265 resources to 146 people. How many of the community health workers are in providing these social needs assessments that are counted in here? Like, is it the 8? It's not the Women's Care Center ones?
Well, the Women's Care Center, folks in the community health workers within the Women's Care Center also help with providing resources.
Okay, so they're included in, I guess what I'm wondering is, there are 327 people, you received 373 assessments, 327 people that it needs reported. You helped 146 people. Like, how many community health workers were included in that group that was providing these this help to the 146 people?
14.
This is all 14.
Well, let me defer to a little bit, because you're right, I guess a couple of them are led, let me defer to Taylor, because a couple of them led community health workers as well.
I oversee the community health worker program and I support health equity. For those who have not yet met me, nice to meet many of you. The community health worker program, so March did not include Tristina and Kathy, they came in later. And then the lead team, the 3 lead team that is now 4, not all of them were doing, they were not necessarily completing SNAs because they're doing the state mandated monitoring and case management. So if a family needs an SNA from that, then they will complete it. But what we saw is over the year, there were less of SNAs completed for families that had lead for monitoring. So those numbers are looking at more than starting in June. Tristina really started to do that, some SNA. So that's one of the Women's Care Center. Kathy was able to complete some of those starting in August, really for Kathy. So those 2 would not count. The 8 CDC CHWs that you're mentioning, we didn't have all 8 throughout the entire time period. Some of them were still in training. So roughly anywhere between 6 to 9 individuals were completing all those SNAs. So 6 to 9 individuals provided services for hundreds of individuals within this community, and we're able to provide hundreds of resources. So 6 to 9 people, not a very large team, actually,
Okay.
quite a small team.
But that includes like the needs that Women's Care Center was provided to people at Women's Care Center. So I'm just trying to think if one of the other, does that include like the insurance assistance?
So insurance and assistance will be a separate report that was within there. So
Okay.
as insurance is separate and not the same.
So,
SNA is required to complete an insurance assistance,
okay,
but it is not necessarily that all SNAs have insurance on there as identified needs.
okay. So when you have needs requested by category,
Yes.
health insurance is not included as one of those needs that they're looking for.
Because we separate all those out into a separate report that's in there.
Okay,
Yeah, so if you look at the numbers, you'll see that most of our team we're not able to be insurance navigators in March. So most of our team were able to become insurance navigators, and this includes the 8 CDC CHWs. Many of them received, probably 5 of them were able to receive it by June. And so our insurance numbers were based off of the few lead CHWs we had at the time. And then since then, you'll see an increase every month in insurance navigation. And that's due to more of our team becoming certified insurance navigators through the state of Indiana.
okay. So, okay, do we have a separate chart that shows how many, I'm trying to see how many people were given insurance? Is the insurance insurance assistance? I thought that on page 36, does that refer just to, I thought that this just referred to Women's Care Center.
I don't have the report in front of me.
So you have the insurance on page 34, where they talk about every month of December, 38 individuals requested assistance.
Says
With insurance and navigation of those 1 individual sounded reached, blah, 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 3 times time.
Okay.
10 individuals were successfully awarded insurance and 18 individuals have begun the process. So 28 individuals. It does take some time marching through, and Taylor can go through the nitty gritty on that.
And that is from just the CDC CHWs, because the Women's Care Center CHWs, their numbers currently we're meeting with FFSA currently because a lot of theirs are getting kicked back. It's much harder to switch insurance to pregnancy Medicaid than to get new insurance. So it's not the same as applying for brand new insurance.
You know, I'm sorry. This is a quick question. It's a question I realized I should have asked at some point and never did. For clarification. So when you're with immunizations, when you're talking about the total number of immunizations given, is that like when you're talking about an immunization like a jab that has 3 immunizations in it, is that counted as 3 immunizations or 1? It's counted as 3. Okay, that's what I assumed, but I realized I never actually clarified that. So, okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question about the lead screening? Because it became state law January 1st for mandated lead screenings, 2 under the age of 7. Are you anticipating an uptick in, or do you think that that will affect your numbers? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the primary care physicians within the state of Indiana, within St. Joe County are a little bit more compliant with the recommendations. Certainly hope that that happens, and that's the expectation, as you know. There's no stick to this. There's no penalty if a physician is not compliant. But with a little bit of luck, we'll see some.
Does the health department offer trainings or guidance for practices that want help getting that set up, but they haven't been doing it, or
We
they
can certainly look at it for requested. I'm not aware. Did we proactively go out to physicians' offices?
We don't currently, because it's this, they're at infancy, all children are screened for lead. It's regular process. So it's just that one of the things what we're seeing is that every year, the annual screening is not always completed. And so our numbers have already increased. We actually prepared to drop our numbers in July. So we have already seen an increase in how many kids we are providing the services for at this time. But we can definitely go if they would like us to.
Okay, thank you.
State office, the state health department, they're telling us that lead is going to go up by 4 to 5 times.
That's what I would.
That's what we've been told. So
The only,
I would expect that we're going to see a surge. Yes.
Kristen, we have a special budget specifically for lead-based activities in this county. You'll see a double budget for that in there. We've sometimes struggled to use all of those dollars because we don't have the capacity to get out and get all of the lead testing that we'd like to have. So if anything, some of these lower cutoffs will allow us to gather more of those folks together who are in need of services and be able to really lean into that budget and be able to use that well for the county. So that's pretty exciting. I know I've had some conversations with the Indiana Department of Health over the last week or two about how we report to them the information about lead levels in this county, and they are still trying to find their way through some of this legislation as well. So many of the testing tools that doctors' offices have don't report a number when it gets down to very low levels. So as you know, any amount of lead is too much lead for a kid to have in his body. And so what do you do when the machine just says less than 3.5? How is that to be reported to the health department downstate? And they don't have strong answers for us on that either, but they're making some changes so we can capture that better. Cassie White, our epidemiologist, and epidemiologist down in Indianapolis would like to have a really good data set to do research on census tracts here. And the current reporting will make it challenging to do that as well as we'd like it to. So changes are already happening downstate to try to make that be a better process.
Speaking of data, how is the EMR system?
You know, it's coming along, John. It's coming along. We're making enough reasonable progress. You said all along from the very get-go that it would take 3 or 4 or longer months. Some people say a year or 2 before we're comfortable with it. But I'm pleased. And under Jody's leadership, we're doing just fine.
Other questions for Dr. Einters?
I just had a question, just because it's not on the agenda anywhere else. Somebody sent us, any Senate, but I think it's yours, a document that talked about the governor's task force or whatever their report and your assessment of it, which was very helpful, whoever did it. Thank you. And are we ever gonna get any more in depth on that or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, with the other things that we needed to deal with our leadership today, the decision was made to push that off to a later date. But you and I should begin in earnest to look at that and decide where in our calendar and how we want to begin to dig into this. Is it a sequential sort of thing? Is it a Saturday seminar? Like, how do we want to do that? I think that's one first thing that I want to talk with you about is how do you see us teeing that up?
Okay.
John, that particular document was put together at the request of Craig Gruber, who's the CEO of Beacon Health System, who was meeting with Senator Mishler, who is playing a leadership role within the legislature on the Governor's Public Health Commission recommendations.
Okay.
And he asked Heidi and me to put together a list of how we might, we as a department within St. Joseph County might use the resources if the recommendations were approved by the legislature. I then met with all of the unit directors, and collectively we talked about these recommendations and collectively put together the list that you see in front of you. I'd be more than happy to respond to any question at any time about what that document that we put together. As you're all probably well aware, the Public Health Day is this coming Thursday, next week, coming, not tomorrow, the week after. And since the legislature is only in session for 4 months, clearly there's some urgency to move on this matter and to be speaking with our representatives. And it was clearly something that the Board of Health would play an active role in. So again, very happy to respond to any questions that you have.
Yeah, on their report, it's not for today, but it just seems like Indiana as a state is not pursuing federal funds the way other states are. I may be misreading that, but what do we do?
No,
about that?
actually, John, we're at the bottom. That's well documented. You're 100% correct.
Why are,
Our public health funding, we are number 50 out of 50 states for public health funding, and it's because we don't pursue those opportunities. And federal funds are all of our taxpayer dollars. It's just returning it to us to invest in our communities. That's all that means. So, when Dr. Einters came on, it was like green light for starting to apply for new grants, right? And because that's in his toolbox. I mean, he's been so successful with grant writing, and then he empowered his directors to go out and do the same. And so I think it's documented in that report, the amount of grants that we have procured in the last 3 years as compared to many years before, so we should absolutely be going for more, for sure.
we need to figure out if that's our role or if that's somebody at the state's role.
Well, so in our advocacy role, I guess I'm thinking about, right? So I'm thinking that Ryan Mishler, Senator Mishler, who is one of the key figures who's going to be working on the state budget, that is somebody that we could be advocating with to say, what more could the state be doing to procure more federal grants? We absolutely should be doing that. The amount of money coming into the CDC right now is unprecedented. And we could be having money for TB, immunization, water, environmental health, et cetera. I mean, the list goes on. And we should have all of that and more.
My sense, John, is that it's not one or the other, but I think it's both of us together that need to be looking for opportunities for extramural funding. So at state, they clearly need to be looking for federal funding, and perhaps others. I don't really know what's available down there at state beyond the federal funding. And here locally, we need to be looking at federal sources when it's available, and of course, other extramural sources, community foundations, et cetera. One of the problems that we as a local department have in terms of being competitive for federal awards is that most of those federal awards, or at least I might say most, don't hold me this, but I'm pretty sure most, the vast majority are designated for states or for municipalities with populations greater than 500,000. And so, for example, the city of Indianapolis is eligible to apply for a lot of grants that we as a county health department simply are not eligible to apply for by federal guidelines. And it contributes, in my personal opinion, it contributes to some of the disparity that we see in terms of the really huge amounts of money that we see flowing into Berrien County. And here, Mishawaka, South Bend, St. Joe County really not even being able to compete for those funds.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Does it help to partner with community, like health systems or other organizations?
There's no question that to the degree to which we can partner it does help us with certain grants. It increases our competitiveness. It's one of the reasons I was particularly keen to develop a stronger partnership with the University of Notre Dame. Having that partnership with the University of Notre Dame augments and enhances our monitoring and evaluation. I think one of the things that Ellen was getting at with the community health workers, just making sure that we have really good monitoring and evaluation capacity. And so these partnerships are very helpful. But it depends on the specific funding opportunity and funding opportunity announcement. So with health systems, of course.
And there's not like a directory they put out every day. It's like, hey, here are the grants available for.
There is actually online, there's over 200 mental health care grants available right now that we can apply for. My question too is, so you're saying that the heads of all the departments that they are all capable and trained in grant writing?
No. They're not, yes, they're all capable. They're not necessarily trained in grant writing. And collectively, though, it is something that we as a department have been trying to move forward with.
For
And so,
training, is that what you mean?
Please,
For training?
if training is needed, and more so right now, just the getting over the inertia of applying for grants. A lot of these grants are relatively simple to apply for. They require very little training. We have the capacity among those of us within the department to assist any department head to any department unit director.
And are we allowed, being on the board to write grants? I don't know if that's okay. Like, are we allowed to apply and write?
For the department,
Correct.
you could. Every grant needs to be signed off on by the commissioners.
Right.
So any grant that's written has to be signed off by the commissioner. So they have the ultimate say on whether we can even apply for a grant.
Okay.
And then,
But we can work with your department heads.
sure.
Okay.
They've been really successful, Chris, and it's really
I really
Impressive.
want to get,
grants.
I want to know what you guys' passions are, meaning obviously, if you work in the department, you're passionate about that department. But he's not lying. There's so much money that we're just not getting our hands on that we should. I feel like a little bit, and I don't know all this, but I feel like we sit there and go like this, somebody help us. Let's fix it ourselves. Like if we have to, like, let's get in there and write these grants. Let's make these appeals. Let's get the commissioners to approve them. Let's help me help you, like, let's do that. Like, that's what I feel like being on the board. That's what I feel like we're supposed to be doing for you guys, like helping you. So for real. So like, I that's what I want to put my energy into. It's like, I'm just on the board. I'm not the president or anything. No position, but that's what I want to put my extra time in is let's get this going for our community by doing it. Don't sit there and go, can we have some money? No, give me the money. And this is why,
They've been really doing a great job
yeah,
with grants. They really have.
yeah. I think we can amp it up. That's all I'm saying. I think there's a lot of money that just lays around. So
If you find it, let us know.
it's online. I already been doing that. So, yeah.
Other questions for Dr. Einterns about his report? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is new business. Does this come back to you to lead this, Marcel?
No,
Item 2303, thank you very much.
I don't feel.
Right on cue, thank you. Item number 2303 is appointments to the Personnel Committee. Personnel Committee currently involves Dr. Heidi Weidinger and Dr. Jason Marker and Ellen Rylander, and previously was Dr. Alana Kirsch. That does not mean that you have to roll into her position on the Personnel Committee, but we do need to select 4 individuals to be on the Personnel Committee.
As Vice President, I'd like to be on.
I would like to nominate John to be on it. That's,
I'd actually like to nominate Teresa to be on the personnel as well.
We'll need to take one motion at a time, and we start with a motion for
I'd
John.
like to nominate John Lund.
Is there a second
I
for that?
second.
Their discussion, your discussion would include a desire to nominate Teresa Cruther.
Yes, well, I think John as the vice president should be on there. But I think since we are going to be using and because of that, I think since we are going to be using we are going to be working for a new health officer, I think having Teresa on board would be helpful as well for that open slot.
I thought, I'm sorry, can I ask you a point of information?
I know. Are we talking about John?
Oh, I thought you said both.
We have a motion. We're at
okay.
the point of discussion about that motion. I was
Oh, I didn't
use some
realize.
time to talk about your
Okay.
thoughts around how we might shift these around. I don't know how formal we really have to be about this. We have to come up with a slate of individuals to put on personnel.
Point of information, are we doing this like one-on-one? Are we doing 4 at a time or?
You're in uncharted waters.
Okay, I'm just asking.
You can make whatever motion you want.
I made a motion.
Since it's your motion,
Okay.
you can amend it.
I'd like to amend my motion.
Let's hear it.
I would like to nominate John Lynn, Jason Marker, President, Vice President, Teresa, who third, and start with that.
I'll second. Well, would I stay on the personnel committee then?
Not currently, but we have a motion in a second, not to interrupt.
We
the
sort
chair.
of start from scratch each year.
Oh, okay.
So we have a motion to begin the process with 3 names for the personnel committee. Is there a second for that motion?
There is Dr. Cruther made a second.
Right.
Very good. Thank you. I didn't hear that. Any other discussion about those 3 names? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so we start with John and I and Teresa. Not be unreasonable in the time when we are going to be selecting new health software to have a couple of other people on that committee. I don't think I'd rather overfill that than underfill it, given the work that we'll be doing ahead. Are there any other motions regarding nominations to the personnel committee?
I'll make a motion to add Ellen back to the committee.
I'll second it.
Very good. Any other discussion about that? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign. That gets us to 4 on that committee. Are you happy with that?
yes.
That is the tradition, 4 on personnel, 5 on budget. So why not stick with tradition?
Marcel, we have 4.
Four, good.
Where's good?
Can I ask what? I understand the finance committee works with the budget, yes. What exactly does the personnel committee do?
Personnel committee works with all issues of personnel. Primarily, their role is with the health officer and who sits in that position. And in the months ahead, its primary role will be the selection process for the new health officer. If there are other personnel issues that rise to the level of board action, then that would be our work to do as well. Generally, those are held in executive session because they are about personnel matters.
And I assume if you're on the budget committee, you should know something about money.
Yes, yes. However, this is a volunteer board. We don't expect anybody to be an accountant unless they happen to be. Certainly you as a small business owner have a lot of wisdom about financial.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also, but yeah.
Whatever you need.
Okay.
Wherever you want me. I'm the same way, wherever you need me.
The next item on our agenda is appointments to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee currently involves Dr. Biger and myself as President and Vice President, Dr. Teresa Cruther, Dr. Michelle Migliori, and John Lynn. I think aiming for 5 on the Budget Committee. It is a large process to be done. We'll talk about that at some point. It's a multi-month, multi-step process through the council and commissioners to do that. Historically, we have had both the President and Vice President sit on that like we have on the Personnel Committee. I would open for nominations of how we might like to see that committee look.
I'd like to nominate Kristen. She's a small business owner, wants grant money. Think she's a good
Yes.
addition.
I'm gonna get it.
Second,
Okay.
do you want to do a slate?
I was gonna
Yeah.
go.
Can we do
Yeah,
amend?
let's do it.
I would like to
Slate.
vent.
Amend the,
My slate.
amend your slate.
Jason, John, or Vice President and President.
So the existing members, I would. Exist.
So it'll be the five of us. just-
Yeah.
That's right.
I need names. not-
John Lynn, Michelle Migliori, Heidi Bidinger, Jason Marker, and Kristen. Vincent.
Six.
Is that your motion?
That's the motion. And
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussions about that?
That's six people.
All in favor, say aye.
I,
Pose same sign. That was everybody on one committee and John and I are on both.
So not.
Feels like good symmetry there, right?
Did that include Teresa?
I did not.
Oh,
Yeah.
because you, we said.
She's on the-
Personnel.
she's in personnel.
Yeah.
Sorry, don't mean it.
Ultimately, the work of these things comes to the board. And, board
I thought it was
discussion.
the-
Something that the committee does is just automatically moved on past the board. So you will certainly have a say in personnel matters, just as Dr. Kritzer will have in in finance matters as well. So it all comes back to us eventually.
Just hash it out and present. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Saves everybody a little time that way. We also have an appeals committee. I can't remember when this was used last.
Not
What
during my tenure.
What is that used?
is that used for, Marcel?
And it's used to be the body that decides if a order from the health officer is correct or not. So you essentially act as a quasi judicial body. They can choose, they being a petitioner can choose to do that or go to circuit.
Can I make a motion?
You may, we are.
And
open
we
to
haven't
motions.
had any recently because the orders have all been fine.
They always go through the attorney.
I would I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jason Marker and John Lynn to serve on the appeals committee.
That typically has been a two-person committee comprised of president. vice
I second that.
I would like
Even though-
3.
Yeah, you should.
Oh.
I would think
Because
you'd want.
if they tie,
Right.
that's a bad
Oh,
name.
okay.
I mean,
I'll amend my slate. Does anybody want to volunteer?
I volunteer.
Lisa Crawford.
Other discussion? That was a motion.
That was a
Is there
motion.
second for that? motion?
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We have filled our 3 committees. We'll get some information to all of you with the list of those names and eventually timelines of when work needs to begin for those 3 areas. Very good. Thank you very much. Next in new business is item 2406, discussion of steps to appoint a new health officer. I had talked to Marcel a few weeks back about helping us understand what those steps need to look like, whether there is legislative guidance on how we are to proceed forward, timelines, those sorts of things. What can you tell us about that?
So it has to be a position. The board has to find someone. They send that recommendation on to the county council who approves them.
County council.
Yes, and then the county commissioners then ratify the county council's decision. So it goes through everyone.
Is there a timeline for that?
There is no timeline set forth in the statute, but as we know, we have a timeline hanging over us. So. it would be
If
best to have
there
both.
is an interim time between the end of March and the selection of a new health officer, does the deputy health officer automatically step into that role, or is there an interim selected?
You would have to appoint the deputy health officer to step into that.
Any appointment to an interim position follows through the same pathway of board, council, commission.
Yes,
So even if it's an interim person, there is a process that is required to be for that, whether that's the current deputy health officer or someone else.
I don't remember that last time.
I don't know what y'all did last time. I went.
Okay,
It's just
yeah,
that,
because we had to do it.
yeah. So anyone to serve as a health officer has to go through that process.
And it can be part-time or full-time position.
Yes.
And if it's part-time, what is the estimated number of hours? That might be a joke, but like,
That's up to y'all. I think Dr. Bob says 80 is a part-time position. Is that right?
do you feel like somebody could work in your position, meaning a doctor?
With a full-time other job?
Yes, and be a part-time, fill that part-time role?
No.
Okay, so you're looking for somebody who is retiring
Or is interested in taking a part-time role as a health officer.
but not work full-time as a doctor any longer?
not work full-time as a doctor and lawyer. It seems like that would be judicious. Now, what I would say is the conversation we're having right now is really initially the conversation for the personnel committee, because we will then work with Marcel to lay out what is that job description? Is it same or different than what Bob's has been? Are we looking for a person who's 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours? What does that really look like? What do we believe our desires are as a board vis-a-vis the leadership of the department?
Because you have administrator as well then, correct? If you
That's
had a
up to
part-time,
that's
oh,
up to the
okay,
That is TBD.
got it.
It does not have to look like it has looked in the past, but the personnel committee will chew on that a bit and then bring that to the full board and say, here's what we believe this person will do for us. And then we would begin in earnest to look for that person who would fill that role. Several steps.
Got it.
That
It
sounds.
has not always been easy to find a health officer, just so you know, it's not, yeah, it's not an easy role to fill. Well, it's demanding. And
And
then there's salary-
To leave their
salary
practice.
conditions and a young physician sometimes has loans. And so it's super complex.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to find that right fit. In other health departments in the state, I know that some of them go to a part-time health officer and then nominate or appoint somebody to be like a chief executive officer of sorts or chief operating
That's what I was
officer.
wondering.
Yeah, so, the personnel committee is gonna need to come in and decide, what are the options and what could that look like? But you've got about every permutation and combination here in the state of Indiana trying to meet the mandates of a health department with regard to the health officer's position.
There are very few actual solid guidelines for what has to happen, except that it needs to be a physician. Beyond that, it is open to the personnel committee and the board to decide what that looks like and then find that person to pass on up with the approval of the council and commissioners. To a certain extent, we look at the work that the department does and say, how many hours does a leader in that person in that role need to be available to help that work continue? So it really ought to start with us looking at our strategic plan sound. Are we doing the things that we need to be doing? Are there areas that we want to expand into? And if so, do we have enough horsepower in the new person to make sure we can expand into those areas? So all of that is for discussion at the first personnel committee meeting.
Over the decades, we've had part-time administrators, so we've done different combinations.
Right.
Kind of depending on who's available.
Yeah.
What like you said, Jason, the strategic plan calls for it.
I think having conversations with unit directors, the personnel committee, having conversations with the unit directors to say, what are the strengths of having a full-time health officer as compared to when you had a part-time one, you had an administrator, you didn't have an administrator, kind of all of those permutations and combinations to find out what it was like to work under, different structures and so forth. Because I think their input is invaluable into this process because they work with the health officer every day. So.
We have a job description for the health officer.
Yes, we do.
Can we,
We posted it.
Pardon?
We posted that when we were hiring for the health officer.
can we send that to everybody just so we have that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That packet that will come to you and I and Teresa and John as part of the personnel committee will that should include our strategic plan, probably an organizational chart with the names of all the people, and we'll use that to strategize what our process will be moving forward.
Okay.
Anything else anyone has question wise about this steps to appoint a new health officer?
No.
No, thank you very much. Item 8 on the agenda is old business, and there are no items that are old business. Board item number 9 is board notifications. We have had one hiring and one retirement. Mercedes Lopez has joined us as a community health worker at the start of December, and Carol Frizzy, our buildings clerk, retired after 35 years with the Department of Health in the middle of December. That is quite a long tenure with our department. That's great. We now move on to item 10, which is public comment. Any member of the public may give an in-person public comment. It can last up to 3 minutes. We have a list. Come here on the list, so I know. And Smith, you have Thank you.
Say where we live, or is that just?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Live on 536 South Sunnyside Drive in South Bend. I've enjoyed being educated as an occasional visitor to these board meetings over the last 6 or 8 months, and I appreciated the discussion just now, the process of hiring a new officer. There was no mention, and it's understandable, of the public's possible role in that process. But I would ask that, as in many other things in the meetings I've enjoyed attending, the health department and the officer have seen part of the role as educating the public on the science, on the medical things, on the environment, and persuading people that good work is being done and good advice is being given. And so part of the naming of a health officer is to perhaps to raise the profile of that position and the understanding of that position and of the department in the public's eye. I don't know what role the public might have played in the past, but I love the educational role of this department and sitting officer. And I would urge you all to make us love our democracy more by making us, as members of the public, feel like we're part of the process and that we see good results and that we learn about our world in the process. So thank you.
Stecker. My name is Ellen Stecker. I live at 1036 North Niles Avenue in South Bend, and I've been a member of this community since 1977. Much of that was spent as a family physician, and in that role, and also as a member of a very large extended family, I have become over the years very aware of the social determinants of health, as they say, the importance of housing, of transportation, of services that you cannot get in your physician's office. And I watched as our health department over the years that I was in practice gradually became less and less a part of the community. And that was a concern. I mean, we see, the numbers that you quoted in Heidi, in terms of where Indiana stands in terms of public health and that. So I was very interested when Dr. Einhorst came here, and of course, then the pandemic came, and I saw how so many of the health department really rose to that very difficult occasion where we didn't really know the whole science and what was going on. And you rose to the occasion, you put the challenge to the community, you faced the challenge yourself as the health department in terms of trying to gather resources together. As I heard some of the stories from some of the health department people about how they had to work to get masks and gowns and so on and into the right place so that we could work with our community as we gained more information. So I want to thank you all in the health department for doing all of that, because that is so important. It may have saved my life. It may have saved other lives that are important to you. I want to commend you for really rebuilding the health department. And in the midst of that very nasty pandemic, which we are not fully out of yet, remember, you have developed some real strong community programs, which are so important. And I think they're important. I work with community health workers in Nicaragua, in Peru, and other places, and so have some of our other physicians in the room today. And I think those things are important, and commend you for all of that. So I'm not sure we can find somebody who can work as hard as you have, like Dr. Einhorst, in terms of that. I know the board has worked very, very hard on these issues, and I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stecker.
Marilyn?
Well, they're talking into doing this. I represent a group, an organization that's working on reparations. And Dr. Eisner and the rest of you guys over there, we've worked together and learned a lot. I mean, we're getting a new pool, and then, well, the old Bendix, but in Kennedy Park, and they're gonna have swimming lessons for the young people. And that's something I learned that was needed at one of our events. Also, I am concerned, like this gentleman here, the brown, I think that's brown. My vision is really bad right now. But anyway, you mentioned you have been on the board or working here since 1990 something.
With the health department, not for the health department.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask you what you did, but I and our group has had a problem with this organization because you didn't have any data on the Black people in South Bend. And it's like, do you care about us? We have chronic diseases that we're working with. We have patients, Black patients that are afraid to go to white doctors. We have a need for people to go to the doctor, you know, who aren't afraid to go to the doctor with others that have appointments. So we have a lot of issues out there. We have a lot of concerns with health disparities, a lot of them. I don't know if you know children that have died or babies that have died because the young mother maybe didn't get care or there is some problem going on with the family, lack of knowledge, what have you, but it happens. And it happens in a big way. Then I heard this mental issue, and I know for a fact, Marion County has about 4,000 people coming through for jail. And of the 4,000, that's monthly. Of the 4,000, about 67% of them have a mental issue. And then we couldn't get one here. I don't know if you care about the community, but if you do, I just would ask that you show more. Thank you.
And the last one, turn yourself off the list, you thought it was the same issue.
Seeing there's no more public comment, we will announce the time and place of our next regular meeting, which will be right here on February 15th at 4:30 in the space. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Maybe, even though I'm not, no, I'm very interested.
No problem. Objective.
It's true. It's.
Why I'm here.
Good.
Second.